Welcome back, beautiful friends out there in cyberspace, to this new episode of 30 Minutes with a Modern Mystic. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Sascha.
And today's topic is going to be abundance. Would you like to start out talking about your perspective on abundance, Michael?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, really. I'm not sure that many people deeply relate to the word abundance. I don't think we relate very well to the word prosperity. If you I've checked several dictionaries for the word prosperity, and not once was money mentioned. Prosperity means to thrive, to prosper, to do well, to move ahead. It doesn't talk about an accumulation of money. And so when I wrote my book on this subject, More Than Money, True Prosperity, I didn't realize that the Western take on those words, okay, well, there's nothing more than money, so it won't be terribly interesting. It's like if I said in the Western world, simple is powerful. No, sorry, Westerners say simple is stupid. Whereas if I said in the Asian world, simple is powerful, yes, that's very wise. And so when you write a book, you don't allow for these sort of mindsets. You learn that gradually by trial and error, mostly by error.
Right.
And so More Than Money, True Prosperity turned out to be a poor title. If I named it something like abundance, having it all, now that would catch the attention because everybody wants it all.
Right.
And that includes everything. And so our relationship with the word abundance and with prosperity is nothing like our relationship with the word wealth. Wealth says it in the Western world, wealth. This is what I want, wealth, more wealth. And if you say rich, it's assumed that that means wealth, whereas rich doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean wealth at all. And although I have to say that the content of words changes from one century to another, and then that's a subtle process. So abundance to me involves the mental, emotional, and the physical health, as well as having your bank account in a healthy state and your life in a healthy state. It's the whole lot. That to me is what abundance is. And it's not common. You know, we have more billionaires on the planet every week, and yet I never seem to find billionaires that don't want more money. I mean, I don't know them personally, but they always seem to be on seeking more money and ways to make more.
Would you say that people who have a lot of money live an abundant life, or that they have achieved abundance, or can you have a lot of money without being in a state of abundance?
I think they live an abundant life, without any doubt. So, I mean, if abundance to you is having everything you want, but you may have a persistent cough that you've had 5 years, but hey, I can cough every now and again, it's okay. That's not in your category of abundance. Having everything you want is. Whereas in my category of abundance, I think my own health would be number one priority, especially after having had 4 months of coughing. So it's
that's what we call an abundant cough.
As a politician once said, the truth is irrelevant. It's people's perception of the truth. And it's the same with everything. It's our perception of everything. So for me, I consider I have an abundant life. Now, at the moment, on the downside of my abundance is that my health is not the best. It's been better. But on the other hand, I genuinely feel that I will come back to full and better health than I've had in a long time. But that's an inner feeling. Yeah, and yet inner feelings are part of abundance. When you if you have not much money, but you feel like you're a rich man and everybody who knows you loves you and your family adore you, that is true prosperity. That is a very rich person.
I would
That
agree.
is abundance that you can't buy.
So isn't in the end abundance something that cannot be measured by anything, neither by the amount of money you have, nor by the amount of appreciation, nor by success, nor by not even your health, but isn't it something that comes down to your own inner knowing that everything is perfect?
I agree. I think that says it very well, Sasha. But I also think that the abundance of an atheist is a very different experience than the abundance of a person who has a rich spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
That rich spiritual life is part of abundance to that person, but to the atheist, it means nothing. But if somebody outside was looking at them, and how do you see it? Mr. A has a rich spiritual life and millions, and Mr. B is an atheist and he has billions. Who is the most successful? Most of them would plump for Mr. B. Unless they were spiritually inclined, then they'd say, oh yes, Mr. A's got it all. He's the one with the spiritual life. So again, it always comes down to our perception of the way things are. But there are a few little tricks I've learned through my life, and they're worth passing on. For instance, if you want to, where we focus, our energy flows with, connects with, and creates. Probably three of the most common words in the English language are I can't afford. And it would be one of the most common thoughts, because people like to go shopping and they like to look in shop windows and they love to look at things they can't afford, probably never will be able to afford, and think, oh God, that's so beautiful, but I can't afford it. So all that is slugging the consciousness of abundance, because in us, there are two states of consciousness. I wouldn't say they're in conflict, but they're uneasy with each other. One is abundance and one is poverty. And I think we share them all to some degree. Like my lesson was to learn that when there's a drought, I look at the garden and see it devastated, and to think of poverty of rain. And so what I've taught myself to do is every time I go out in the garden and look at it, or everything wilted or leaves falling off it, I teach myself to say, okay, well, one day closer to the next big rain. Now that shifts me into the consciousness of abundance. So it doesn't actually have to be there, because you simply know it's there, and it'll be there in timing. And the timing of the weather, you can't organize. So you can make some difference with that in as much as the way we think and speak. So you go in a shop and you spend some money, and as you hand it over, whether it's a card or whatever, you think or say. Saying is more powerful, but it can be confronting occasionally. There's plenty more where this comes from, meaning the money. There's plenty more where this comes from. So that establishes that you're in a flow of energy that we call money. Whereas I can't afford takes you out of the flow of the energy that we call money. And also when you say the words, to feel it emotionally, to emotionally feel, my God, it's all there waiting for me, and I don't have to have any fears. It's very, very powerful. And the other little tip I would suggest is always think with abundance, but if you don't have much money, act with frugality. So in other words, you don't go shopping to make yourself better, shopping therapy, where you extend your credit card, which is simply delaying the impact for later, and it will catch up with you. You think with abundance and get into that flow of energy, and you spend with frugality, but as because you're thinking with abundance and emoting with abundance. As that brings in the flow, then you can increasingly spend. But if you're in the state of not much money, be very frugal with what you spend and very generous in your thinking and feeling, because the most important of that is the emotions. The thoughts always are accompanied by emotions. And if you're not conscious of this, because poverty consciousness is very much a subconscious program, whereas abundance is very much an in-the-moment conscious program. And I mean, let's say, just to retract, some people are naturally gifted with the Midas touch. Everything they do makes money.
Yeah.
And that's obvious, many obvious examples. Others lose money with everything they try to do. But each one of us has our lessons in that. You know, if there's nothing by chance and nothing by accident, and you are a very intelligent person capable of making a lot of money and you don't have it, then you might have to ask yourself, is it in my greatest spiritual interest to get lost on the money track, or is it better that I focus on my spirituality, just knowing that I will have enough? Because those people always do have enough. I was one of those people for many, many years. And so that's how I sort of see abundance.
Why do you think do so many people create poverty themselves?
I think that's a lot of that is inherited. I think if you're okay, let's look at the bigger
And
picture.
yes, maybe let's look at the root cause if we can.
Yeah, well, let's look at the bigger picture. Let's say when you come to time to die, you've had a life of poverty. You've struggled all your life. So struggle and not enough is now in your consciousness. When you go into your transition, there is no God that says, okay, we'll wipe that all out. You can start afresh. You can start afresh, but you take your load of mental and emotional stuff with you. And the feeling of poverty and struggling for a whole lifetime is a very, very heavy emotional load. If it's staggeringly heavy, you would probably incarnate into a third world country. And so you'll spend another lifetime struggling. If it wasn't too staggeringly heavy, you would probably incarnate in a poorer area in a city or somewhere where you can struggle your way out of it. But we're handicapped with terms like success and failure. They're completely nonsense. There's no such thing as success and failure.
What is it?
We are human souls, and we are learning in our own learning curve in the way that is unique to us, which is the way that we need to learn. No failure, no success.
Right. I was going to say that what is it that keeps people in the poverty loop? Is it some kind of an addiction to a certain thought pattern? Because it's not something pleasant, right?
Actually, you're right. I mean, like, is an addiction to alcohol pleasant? I mean, I'm sure that alcoholic in the latter days, when he needs a six-pack to get out of bed, that's not particularly pleasant. And so it's a downhill spiral, and it gradually begins to change the brain. I know somebody who's addicted to sunbathing.
Sunbathing?
And he was sunbathing. He was told years ago, this is killing your skin. But he couldn't stop. He could not stop. He has to have his clothes off and be out in the sun. And we're talking sometimes temperatures of 50 degrees Fahrenheit, Celsius. I mean, that's seriously hot. So he gets burnt badly. He has to put a salve on his skin every day, and it hangs on him like a rhinoceros hide. And it's like the skin it's like it's not dead, but it's not alive. It's very strange, but you say to him, but wouldn't it be easier to stop? And the truth is he can't. And you get people who smoke cigarettes are completely unable to stop. They just cannot. And so poverty is exactly the same. They are so lost in poverty, their self-worth goes so far down that they don't think they deserve more than they have.
It's like
Now
a
that's not,
self-fulfilling cycle, right? It's like it's
that's a,
reaffirming those thought patterns.
that's a generalization. I'm not trying to put everybody in the same bag. It's a generalization. And then you begin to have the feelings of incompetence. It doesn't matter what I do, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're in this, you're stuck in this. And like my son-in-law, Chucky, who died an alcoholic, he said, well, I can't afford to be dried out. He had a millionaire friend. His millionaire sat down, wrote out a check. Here you are, 40,000. That's yours, a gift. Go and get dry, go and get to the place. He wouldn't have a bar of it. He wouldn't do it because he was addicted. And offering them the way out, it doesn't do it. And even if you pushed him through the door, he'd push his way back another day. And so these things depend on timing. And so there's a long time of going deeply into the cycle to explore it. Now, the paradox is of this: the drunk in the gutter might be closer to enlightenment than the billionaire who walks by and looks at him scornfully and cynically and says, "You waster." So you can never look at it in a terms of judgment. Chuck taught me that very well. You know, I started off by judging him, and gradually as I got to know him better and saw the patterns, I still don't understand alcoholism. You've got to be an alcoholic to do that. But gradually I saw he was just a victim, total victim, because the brain changes and the brain sets up this demand. I need more alcohol to maintain my altered state, which is lower and heavier and nastier. And his self-worth is about as low as you could have got it. And so that is a common thing, I think, in so many of these tracks, like poverty, the lack of self-worth. I don't deserve anything better.
Also,
And
the word that you just mentioned, victim consciousness, I think is also a common thread between for all people who have a scarcity mindset, who whether they experience a monetary poverty or not, but there is that sense of, oh my God, I'm never going to make it. I am a victim of this world, of the circumstances. My boss just laid me off, and so forth.
I've had very good friends who've died of heart attacks along the way who were like that. They were lovely people, gifted, clever, and yet their legacy that they came in with from previous incarnations said that they were not worth anything. They had no self-worth. I couldn't, two of them I'm thinking of, I couldn't talk them out of it.
So,
I could not. Boy, I tried, I'll tell you.
So in the bigger picture, I guess we've come to the conclusion that it needs this awakening to your own greatness to flip it around. Now,
that is abundance.
Right, to flip it around towards abundance. Now, what is it in your experience that it takes for this to happen? Like, is it something that just builds up over time for most people through a lot of suffering, for others through seeking, and then there's that moment where you flip the switch and suddenly you can see your greatness? Or is it more like a gradual thing that by working on it, you will gradually get there?
I think there's no doubt many people have the switch flicked, but I think the vast majority is a long, slow journey. Mm-hmm. It's a long, slow journey to pull themselves out. If they go and do personal growth courses and things like that, they're on the track. They're not all brilliant, but they all are at least pointing them in the right direction. Some of them are brilliant. but they're all pointing them in the right direction. But that has to show, first, there's a deep desire to get out of this pit that I'm in. And it wasn't my path. I never went to seminars or anything. It wasn't my path. I struggled in my own way. But I've certainly been in the poverty consciousness. I did that years ago. And in a way, I guess I had my switch flipped, because I was sitting on the bed and I learned that with a family of 4 children and a wife, I had $200. And just at the beginning of December, with Christmas approaching, my mind was just completely swirling. How do I deal with this?
Yeah.
And then Trini, my late wife, came in and said to me, "Do you know how much money we have?" And like an idiot, I said, "No." Well, I thought we had $200. She said, "We have $3. Brilliant. So I just lost $197 in about 2 seconds. And she walked out and slammed the door like it was my fault. It may well have been. And I was in such shock. I just couldn't deal with $3. I just couldn't deal with it. I mean, you couldn't be like that if you weren't in a community. But I've never been a freeloader. And here I was. I passed out. I completely passed out. Luckily, I was sitting on the bed, and it might not have been more than 10 seconds. But when I came to, I wish somebody had put a few zeros on the end of 3, like 6 of them preferably, but it was still $3. But it suddenly occurred to me, I'm not a bad person. I'm not a wrong person. I'm not a stupid person. I have a spiritual obsession, which I sort of recognize it was an obsession. I haven't attempted to earn money. I've got this spiritual obsession. That's not going away. Neither do I want it to go away. And so I began to talk to myself more gently, and I took away the language of condemnation and criticism and judgment, which I used a lot, and began to use a more gentle language of myself. And very gradually, the situation began to change. And then a few days later, a woman in the community inherited some money, not a great deal, but she gave everybody in the community a $50 note. So there were 6 of us, and we each had a $50 note. So we had $300 for Christmas, and we had a very good Christmas. But that gift she gave me showed me life was listening. And it wasn't just a coincidence, life was listening. And this is how we all play a part in each other's life. She had no idea what that did for me, nor did I until years later, when I looked back and saw the magnitude of that she particularly flipped that switch.
I have observed that it's quite common for people in the spiritual world, in the New Age world, all among spiritual seekers, to kind of condemn money or accumulating wealth or even being successful sometimes. And then you see them struggling. I know a lot of these people are very highly into spirituality and great people, great heart. But on the one side, they are struggling to get by. They live very basic lives, and not that they're enjoying it, but they're actually really struggling. And then on the other side, there's something where they recognize that they need money, but then they have an internal voice that says, "Oh no, money is bad." So maybe let's talk about that, because it kind of touched that aspect of spiritual.
It's a common thing, not only among some spiritual teachers. Some are into teaching you wealth,
right?
And they call themselves spiritual teachers, but others are into, but also the followers. There's so many people on their spiritual path who seem not to have money. And I think you just said it very well. There's a common perception that money is bad. Years ago, we had a song, "Money is the root of all evil."
Mm-hmm.
Take it away, take it away, take it away, which was a crazy song. But I suspect that quite a lot of them probably had an incarnation in India or Tibet, where they were very spiritually oriented, but begged. And they had a begging bowl. And that was enough to meet their tiny needs, because their needs would be pretty slender because they didn't eat much or anything. And somehow that consciousness is still there, but they're in a Western world, some of them.
Right.
And they don't have a begging bowl, although there's a lot of people do beg nowadays. But they don't have the begging bowl, and they don't really have that degree of spirituality where in some level an aspect of them has superseded the need for money. But I look at it much more in a much more holistic way. Everybody needs, in this day and age, some money. We need it to be able to survive.
Of course.
And survival and a roof over your head are the basic needs. And so we do need to make money. Unfortunately, money has become the god of the times. It's move over, real God, I'm sorry, but money's taken your place. And that's unfortunate. And then the repercussions are that those people react even more to that.
Right.
And I know this because as a spiritual teacher, I remember in the early times that I would do it by donation.
Yeah, that's a
Now,
very common thing, right? I know a lot of healers,
Yeah.
great people, energy people who will not be able to charge for their services because they feel bad for charging.
Yeah, but you see, that's the problem. That's the problem. They are lacking in something. And I know because I've been there. So I did this weekend, you pay what you like. And my poverty consciousness attracted people with poverty consciousness.
Right.
And there were about 25 people, and I would have said 20 of them donated $2 for a 2-day weekend, $2. And it was a smack in the face for me. It was a good one, because I said to a friend, I said, these people only consider this whole weekend and all I shared is only worth $2. And he looked at me, much older man, he said, no. He said, that's what they consider their worth. They consider they're only worth $2, not you.
A lot of wisdom.
And then I realized deeper than that, and yes, and I obviously consider I'm only worth $2.
Right.
Now, 4 of them gave me $50 each. And I looked at these people and I could see the difference in their energy. They were not living in poverty.
Right.
They each gave me $50. So I quit that.
So let's talk about.
Let me just finish. I quit that because I considered I was running away from my responsibility of saying this is my work, because I didn't feel I had any. I tell you, I crawled through the hard way all the way.
So let's dedicate a couple of minutes to talking about ways people who find themselves in this situation can overcome it, or just anyone who just feels in themselves that they have an issue in manifesting abundance and they lack maybe that self-worth or any of those factors that lead to, a lack of abundance in their life.
It definitely begins in your relationship with yourself. Your relationship with yourself is your relationship with life. It is your relationship with poverty, and it's your relationship with abundance. And so you'll find a lot of people are very heavily critical and judgmental of themselves. They get angry with themselves, and they might certainly have enough money to get by on, but they have no abundance, because beating yourself up is not an act of abundance. Whereas if they were comfortable, I don't mind having a low income, there's enough for my needs, but I love the person I'm becoming, you've already made the switch into a different lane. So when you look at abundance, don't necessarily swing it, don't have it on an orbit around money. Have it on an orbit around wellness, holistic wellness, about being loved and about loving, about feeling good about yourself. Let it pivot around that. The reward will come in the form of finance, generally speaking. That's the spin-off. But if it's focused only in finance, then I know, for instance, a millionaire who still has poverty consciousness. He had it when he had no money, and he still has it with now he's a millionaire. He still has poverty consciousness, plenty of money, but he still has poverty consciousness because his consciousness didn't change. It became like a tool to use. He chased after it and made sure he got it. So that's not abundance. Abundance is this beautiful relationship with yourself where you are like your very best friend and you talk to yourself gently and kindly and you act gently and kindly with yourself and it's like the three doors of everything you pass through your life. Is it necessary to say or do this? Is it true to say or do this? And is it kind to say or do this? And if it goes through those three doors easily, then you're walking on the path of abundance. But if you think, I don't know if it's true, but everybody says it is, that doesn't mean it's true. That means so you don't say it for any other person. You don't say it, you don't share it because you don't know it's true. And then you'll find if it's not true, it wasn't necessary. And if it wasn't true, it wasn't kind. So there are three good doorways that a wise person keeps in mind in daily life.
They're actually
And
teaching those principles to our kids at the school here. That's interesting. Like one day they
are they
came,
really?
yeah. One day they came home and said, Dad, you don't know what we're learning. And I said, what is it? Said, we're now always told to ask if we want to say something, is it necessary? Is it true? Is it kind?
Yeah, that's lovely. That's not a regular American
No,
school, I can
no,
tell you.
no.
And yeah, I mean, it's much easier for a child to learn that and grow with it than it is for an adult who's been completely opposite.
Yeah.
So that's how I would summarize abundance: is loving yourself deeply, choosing love. That's all part of abundance.
Always comes back to it.
Always comes back to that, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael, so much. And thanks everyone for listening. Make sure to hit that like button down there and hit that subscribe button as well. This way we can make sure to deliver those things for free to you every week. And also share these videos with the people that you love so they can be inspired too. See you in the next episode, Michael. Thank you so much.
Okay, Sascha, thank you very much. And thank you for listening.